Hi, everybody. This is Teresa Sullivan. I'm going to do some beading for people who have not beaded before, i.e., big old rank beginners. And hey, I was a beginner at one time myself. And the tricky part with learning is you're usually learning from experienced teachers who know exactly what to do. They've done it hundreds of times, and they inevitably, and I hope I don't, skip over little things that make it easier and make it make more sense. So excuse the clothes behind me. I not only have a shop on Etsy for beads, I have a shop on Etsy for vintage clothes, and I had some nice thrift stores lately, and it's all the room I got. My closets are full, so those are ones that I haven't processed yet and put up on the shop yet. But You'll have to, you won't have to look at that or my ugly mug for long. I'm going to get this exciting little close-up camera and show you exactly what, I hope this works. Um, the camera will be focused on the beads, and here we go. It's focused on my glasses now. Close-up lenses, always a good thing if you need them. They're easily available. What I'll do is I'm going to use slightly bigger beads, bigger than the usual size 11, and I will tell you right now, I normally have this on a white ceramic plate. I just put my beads on a white dinner plate, and I'll minimize this thing here. There we go. Um, that way I that way I can see them. Hard to see now because they are white on white, but what can I say? I'm going to use black thread so you can see the thread path more easily. The other thing that I like about a white ceramic plate is that the beads, yeah, they're gonna like run all over the place. They're gonna get mixed up, which is like, oh my God, they're gonna get mixed together. Yeah, well, you're gonna beat them together, so they're gonna be together, and it's kind of hard to tell how they're gonna blend unless they're mixed up on the plate. So you don't have to put a huge amount of on and make a big bunch of bead soup, but it is actually helpful to just have your beads play together. And if they're too similar, you will know that now and not when you just spent, you know, 20 hours on a project or 40 hours on a project. So what I'll do to start is put on a stopper bead, and there are several ways to do this. This is one way, overhand knot with the tail long enough for you to thread a needle on and weave the excess thread back into the finished work. And see how I'm doing another, it looks like it's going to be another pull through, right? Instead, I'm going to just pull the loop through, keep the tail in my hand, and make a slip knot. That is one way. That way, if you put your beads on, once you have the work started, you can just go like this and take that little puppy off of there. The other way is what a lot of beaders use, and that is just, it's a technique that's kind of simple. You run the thread through a whole bunch of times, and that'll keep it stuck on there and it won't slip off. Sometimes a slip knot does come out. The one caveat about this is that when you do start your beading, don't have your needle cross through any of these threads, otherwise you won't get to put this excess to discard this excess bead. Now, my needle, this is why you also use a ceramic plate. My needle is pointing, the way I normally do is I just poke more, the way I string beads on the needle is I poke the needle down into the beads. Well, on a white ceramic plate, my needle doesn't get stuck in the cloth. There are these cute little bead mats that people use a lot, which are actually just a kind of blanket you can get at Costco, only cut up. And they are useful too. They do deteriorate over time if you use them and abuse them a lot. They are inexpensive, however. And if you're traveling, it's easier to pack that than a white ceramic plate. Um, However, it is, of course, easy to pack a white ceramic plate or find a white ceramic plate at your local thrift store, depending on where you go. Now, I have some beads on my string, and notice how I scooch them all down to the end. Don't leave them, don't leave them up here. Your work is going to be all butting up against the stop bead. One thing I should tell you too, I am purposely using black thread with white opalescent white beads because so you can see the thread. The other is that I want to show you that thread is a design element. If I was using white thread, it would look different. Now okay, I'm putting on 10 beads. This is a funny thing that always occurs with written instructions. Um, when you're using odd count beading, you start with an even number of beads. When you use an even count beading, you start with an odd number of beads. The way they get around that verbally in some instruction sheets is to say, okay, we'll start with 10 beads. Now that you've strung 10, add one more. Excuse me, that's 11. That's an odd number of beads. It can be a stumbling block at first. What I'm doing is I'm going to show you what happens when you don't count and you end up with too many beads or too few beads, or well, as long as you end up with too many beads, you're good to go. If you end up with too many beads, as I will do, you can not only discard this bead when you have the work started up, you can discard this bead as well. So if you just string an inch worth of beads when you know you need only 3/4 of an inch, or if you're doing improvisational things and you don't care, as long as it's about this wide or a little bit less, you're good to go. I'll just do this a little bit wider just because we can. And I left my thread short so that I can show you how to deal with what happens when you run out of thread, which will happen sooner than later because I used a short amount of thread. Now, what I'll do is, again, I'm not counting. If I wanted to count, I could. I will just count. I will count. I'll use this like an abacus. I've got 13 beads on there. Let me make it 14 so I can show you that I discount that I can discard an excess beads if I want to. What you do now, this is peyote stitch in earnest. And again, I have to stop myself here. I'm going, oh, okay. I need to point out the way I hold it. It sounds so silly and simple, but the way you hold it makes a difference. If I want good tight thread tension, and generally I do, I see how I'm pinching the work between my thumb and first finger, right where the thread's coming out. Then I stick that thread. The end of the thread goes between my first finger and my middle finger. The middle finger is good for more than one thing. So I do this instinctively now, but I did it purposefully and thoughtfully when I was getting going because, and this is, if you're right-handed, I'm left-handed. Sorry, folks. I'm part of the 11% here. This is the way you're going to hold it if you're right-handed. So my needle's in my right hand, the work is in my left hand. The end of the thread, the beads are being held between the first finger and the thumb. The thread is being tucked in between the first finger and the middle finger. So that's the best way to do it. And if you need to do anything different, here's what you do. Okay, I need to skip over 2 beads and go back through 1 to start my regular peyote single count peyote stitch. This is all I do. I take 2 beads and back them away from the working this part, and I'm still just in uh instantly practically. In other words, just instinctively, I go, okay, I need to skip two. Send them off along their way. And immediately I put, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like a huge, big deal, but because after a while it will become instinctual. You just hold it and you tuck it, hold it and tuck. So this is single count. I have two on the end. I'll show you what happens to the two when I put the needle through one, the next one, and I'm heading back toward this way. First it goes like this, then I pooch it into shape. It's a technical term, pooch, and I make them go stack opposite each other. Then, so that's my first stitch to start the row. I will endeavor to show you not complete. Normally I just completely cover this up and go boom. I'm going to crack it open a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm putting one on, I'm skipping, see how the thread's coming out of this bead. I'm going to skip the following bead and go through that following. I'm going to skip the next bead and go through the following bead. So there's the bead you're coming out of, the bead you're skipping, and the bead you will go through. And yeah, you have to kind of work it in there sometimes. Pull it good and tight and see how I'm traveling back, not in circles, but I traveled this way, then I turned around and traveled that way. I'm going to travel this way until I run out of beads to go through. And when I get to the end of the row, let's see if I have a bead that I can't go through because I strung too many. I think I purposely strung too many. I may have not. So again, so far I have, this is the default, the end stitch, those are the two I skipped over and then I went back through that one. Then strung this bead, skipped this bead, went through this bead, strung this bead, skipped this bead, went through this bead, strung this bead, skipping this bead, going through this bead, all back toward that. Oh, I strung through I strung through my skin on my thumb. Okay, so I'm heading back toward the stop bead end, and it's it's going to kind of curve a little bit, but that's all right. On the following row, it'll get a little more straight. So if this is actually the hardest part is getting the first couple rows going. And I should also note that when you are counting rows, if you need to count rows, this is row one, this is row two, and this is row three. So it's almost like when you string the first bunch of beads and you skip over those two and you go through, you're already on your third row. It's kind of crazy, but that's the way it ends up, only because this ends up being the de facto first row. The ones you skip over, these in the middle here, the ones that you're going through end up being your second row, and then these on the outside that you're putting on, and it seems like, yeah, I'm my first row of stitching, right? Well, yes, in one sense it is, but once you have those rows completed, that's how you count rows. You go one, and then two, and then this row is row three. So don't ask me why, it's just the way bead people do it, I guess. So I'm almost there, and I'm going to see how I'm yanking on this. I am like totally yanking, dude. And again, instinctively, see how I've got it like tucked under my, I'm yanking, I'm yanking it, I'm cranking it, I'm just about ready to turn around and almost thank it. Um, and I do have the correct number of beads to complete the row. If I had, in other words, this one I'm going to skip, this one I'm going to go through, and I'm going to make sure I don't poke my needle into any of these threads that are going around the stop bead, and then I'll turn around at the end of the row. Before I do that, I want to tell you that if I had strung an extra bead, that's no big deal. I would just ignore it. And then when I'm ready to take this bead off, I'd take that bead off as well. So yes, I initially strung, and again, this will turn out to be even count, because odd count is a bit of a different animal. When you get to the end of the row, you have to do different things and it's a little more complicated. So I'm keeping it even count for now. When I get to the end of this row, I will turn around, but before I do that, I will tell you the number of beads I initially strung, not counting my stop bead. Let's not count that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. I strung 13 beads, and this is going to be a row that a line of beads that is 12 beads wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And, or not, let's see. And so in other words, I had to string an odd number of beads to get an even count row. And again, that's kind of it's a something that's hard to get your brain around. Don't worry about it. It really doesn't matter in the long run, and it's not gonna hurt. And again, I wanted to show you that if I had strung the wrong number of beads, it would still be okay. So I get to the end of the row. I hopefully didn't, no, I think I didn't string through, I didn't catch my needle on any of these strings. And I'm ready to turn around and keep cooking along. And this, see how much it's bent? Don't let that freak you out. See, even I'm doing it and it's bent. It will unbend because the fourth row will straighten it out. And, ooh, I went to 2 beads now. Oh, again, this is what, let's see, I almost made a mistake, and I want to show you again, purposely making a mistake. So if this happens to you, you'll know what you did. I accidentally put my needle through 2 beads instead of just 1. Well, that makes it not straight. So that could be a sculptural thing if I want. I've done things like that before purposely, but for now, just for this beginning piece, I don't want I don't want to do that yet because I don't want to stretch your brain to the point of breaking. But if it happens that you have a pinchy down spot like this, and you wonder what you did, that's what you did. No big deal. This is the last stitch you did. This is the bead that you were supposed to go through. This is the bead you were supposed to skip, except you have a piece of thread there. I skipped it. I just didn't put a bead on. So I'll put a bead on. And again, I wanted to show you the pieces, but now I'm going to go back to tightness mode. And yeah, your beads, I mean, those beads are just right there in line, and your needle may go through them. So just, make sure you're just skipping. If you're doing single count peyote stitch, string 1, skip 1, and go through 1. So this is what I just did. I came out of this bead, I strung this bead, and then I went through the next bead. And you keep doing that for a cajillion years, and then you have a beaded piece. I'm just kidding. You keep doing that and doing that, and lo and behold, you end up with a little strip of peyote stitch. I'll finish this row, and I'll for our left brain people out there, I will count the rows and I'll show you. Yeah, now it'll be easier to keep track of if you are row counting at the end of the row and with lots of rows on. But again, see how it straightened out? It's almost a little too far the other way. So probably I'll use some slightly wider beads. These are vintage beads, so the width varies. And again, thread, you can see it. I want you to see it. I want you to see it. I want to be able to make sure you can see it. So see how there, you can see the little connections in between each bead. And again, if I wanted to, if I did a whole swath of this with this black thread, and then I did another swath of it with white thread, they would look different because there's just enough translucency there. If you use completely clear translucent beads and red thread, you're going to get a red stripe effect. It's really fun. So do play around with different colors of thread. Why? Because you can. So see on this end, I reached the end again, so I turned around, put a bead on, and went through the nearest bead. The nearest bead is also known as the up bead, because see how now, it's easier to see now. By now, you can see how there are up beads and down beads. It goes down, up. And on the working end, the part, the rows on which I'm working, I've got this is down, this is up, this is down, this is up. So you always skip over the down bead and pass the needle through the up bead. And it's toward me. I guess I could say the down bead because it's nearer to me, but I always think of it as the up bead because it's just sticking out. What can I say? And so yeah, for row counters, I can say this is row one, or start on this end. This is row, get my flesh behind it so you can see it better. This right here is row one. This row here is row two. This row here is row three. And this row here is row four. And now we're on row five. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sometimes that matters, and most of the time it doesn't. It really depends on how you're using the beads, what you're doing with them. If you have a pattern that you're trying to follow and it says start using this different color at row 5, then you're going to have to count your rows. Otherwise, no, you do not have to count unless you really like to count. And I'm going to put some slightly wider beads on. Vintage beads, the kind of which I sell in my Etsy shop, are often a little more wonky in size and shape sometimes because they're handmade. And again, here I go, boom. I'm always just like yanking on it. That's why I'm using doubled thread. This is silicone thread. It's a love it or hate it thread. I love it. Other people hate it. I know one other person who's a wonderful beater who loves it. Many don't, but I like it because it's a twisted ply thread and it's very strong. It's professional tailoring thread, and I use it doubled because it's literally twice as strong. On these beads, every single bead has 4 strands of thread going through it. That is a good thing. Also, again, I'm just instinctively just yanking it, tucking it, yank and tuck. What can I say? And this is, it's kind of interesting. You can use this stitch for a lot of different things. One of the limitations of the even count is that if you're doing certain types of patterns that have to come to a point in the center of the piece, there is no center of the piece. You have 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Well, the dividing line is right here. The dividing line is not here. There are ways to deal with that. 2 ways. You can use odd count peyote stitch. And again, for now, I will leave it up to you to look up on YouTube, look up on YouTube, uh, odd count peyote stitch, and you'll probably find a tutorial that involves the slightly complicated turnaround at the end of the row. If you're lazy like me, not really lazy, but if you want to do it a different way, there is a different way, and I'll have to do a little more of this before I get enough of a piece, enough length to show it to you. But you can actually add a row of beads on after the fact. So there is a way to, some people will do anything to avoid odd count peyote stitch, and that's one of the ways. If I have a chance to, or possibly in a future video, I'll show you how to do that. Because, oh man, there are many, many things you can do with this. For now, I mainly want to get you looking at me just yanking and tucking on these beads as I work, because that once you get that yank and tuck thing going, you will be having an easier time putting beads together with this stitch, just because, for one thing, when your work is too loose, or you know, because some people will, you know, many people will just not even hold this piece while they're coming and going through it. Um, or especially at the end of the row, at the turnaround, you end up uh, having the beads get a little bit looser just because of the logistics of it. In fact, I'll see if I can show, or see how I'm pulling the beads away from the stitch I just did. If you pull against this way, that is not as efficient in terms of getting the thread tension going. So little things like that are just instinctual if you've been doing it for many years, but if you haven't, it's good to pick it up now rather than having to learn it later. Now, oh yeah, here's what happens at the end of the row. I pulled, and let's say I'm not tucking it in. See how easily it just gets loose? What I'll do instead is I tuck it in, and I only let go at the end. Then, especially at the end, this is always very handy. And I may have done this on camera and not even thought about it as I was doing it. But what I'll do is, if it does, because this can easily get loose. Look at this. You know, right? It's loosey-goosey. What I'll do to remedy that is I will pinch and pull. So see how I pinch, and that pinching, that last bead I put on, actually tightens up the previous rows. So let's say that happens again. I loosen it up. I want to tuck this in here, hold this end of the thread tight, so that, because that's the pull part. The pinch part is up here. And I'll even pinch just the last bead I put on, while I go pinch and pull at the same time, back and forth. Pinch and pull, pinch and pull, pinch and pull. And you got tight work. The advantage to working tightly is that the piece can hold its structural integrity. Also, especially when you're on those first couple of rows, that's so wiggly, it's really hard to tell sometimes what beads are the up beads and what beads are the down beads, because they are just kind of all over the place, especially when it's loose. So tight, tight, tight. What can I say? Now I'm running out of thread. And what I can do, I could put my one last stitch on and end the row, but I want to show you what it looks like when you don't have a full row. Check this out. I've got my up bead, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down. What happened? That's where you restart. So first, before I restart, I'm going to get rid of my old thread. This is the way I do it. This is something that once it becomes easy to you, it is good for beating bigger pieces, because, for one thing, when you have a lot of oh, like if you're using a super long piece of thread, you're probably going to have knots to take out. So I would rather have a short thread and switch my needle over to a new thread than I would having to take out knots all the time. And what I'll do is I'll actually take a little refrigerator magnet. I don't know if you can even get those anymore, but even like a little um, mild magnetic surface. This is like a business card size, and I'll string up a whole bunch of needles on it ahead of time. That way, when I finish a needle, when I'm finishing off my thread, I've got another thread ready to go. It's not a big hassle and no big, easy transition because it's just ready to go. So what I'll do, here's the magic way to, not necessarily magic, but pretty magic, way to discreetly finish off your thread without having it show. This is what you don't want to do. Well, first I'll show you what you do want to do. See how I'm passing the needle directly through the bead, directly underneath the bead? That will make the thread disappear. If I accidentally go up through here, oh, there is thread showing. That's the one thing I mean, I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to doing weird things, making funny shapes and all and stuff with your beads, but showing thread is just not something I like to do. So again, see how I went through the bead directly underneath, directly below or above, of this case, depending on how you're looking at it, the bead that I'm coming out of. And that's getting loose. So what I'll do is I'm going to keep it good and tight. Pull it, pull it, pull it. Now what I'll do is, since I'm using size 8 beads, these are a little bit bigger. I'll use a little bit of size 11s to show you how that works as well. But I'm going to, with size 8s, you need to do a half, what I call a half hitch knot in between the beads. So to secure your thread, so it doesn't just, because this could pull out. See how easy it is to pull out right now? In other words, I just put this through one bead going the other direction. See how it changed direction? I was going this way and now I'm going that way. But yeah, this bead's going to pull right out. So if I clipped it, it's not going to hold. And all that work is going to go, oh, floppity floppity. So what I'll do, uh, as opposed to, and I'll show you this in a minute, when I'm done with this piece. I'll show you some size 11 beads. With 11 beads, usually, especially when you're using doubled thread, once you pass that bead through that bead a third time, and again, see, I'm passing through these beads, at, let's see, yeah, twice. Once you go through a third time, it's going to plug the hole with of a size 11. Since these are bigger, it's not plugging the hole entirely. So what I'll do is I will actually, if you can get away with doing this, what you want to do is tie the thread to the thread. So what I'll do is I'll kind of poke the needle underneath, and this is, in fact, I can even show you this way too. If it doesn't work to do it that way, pull it down in. See how it's going down there, and bring it back up. And if the thread's short enough, you have to back the needle through. I'm going to bring it up here. I want to show you this. So basically it's going to it's passing around the thread that is connecting this bead to this bead. Come on, baby. There we go. I leave this loop out I make sure the needle, whether I poked it through or I backed it through, this time I backed it through, I put that through that loop and boing, that knot is there. And I'll continue down through that bead. See how I, yeah, I went from here to here and I'm going to the neighboring bead. If I go to this bead, again, we're going to have thread showing. I'll show you. Well, not really, but somewhat. I like to go through the nearest bead, and the nearest bead's going to be at a diagonal to the bead I'm coming out of. So notice how I want to undo that stitch that I purposely did as a mistake stitch, but I'm backing it through. If I poke it through, that needle tip is going to go through thread, and then I will make a knot, and then I can't undo it, and I can't back it out anymore. So that's another thing to consider. Um, here's a good so here's what you don't want to do. I'm coming out of this bead, and I'm going through this bead. Ah, thread! So nope. And see how I back it out. I pull the thread. I don't poke the needle back in here because that's going to cross over my thread and create a big old herkin knot, and I don't want a knot there. I want a seamless transition. So this is the bead this is the bead I what this is the last bead I put on. This is the bead I put my last bead on and went through after my last bead. And this is the bead I turned around and went through. I did a knot here in between this bead and this bead, so I could pass through this bead. And yeah, if I want to do, why don't I do that again? Why? Because I can. And if you can, let's see. Well, why? Because I want it good and secure. I don't want all this hard work to go kaflooey, you know. And in I go. Oop, I think I'm catching one of the threads. I try to save my, I try to be efficient. So I think, oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going through both of those. So see how again, I'm going underneath the thread that's going between this bead and the next bead down. And because I don't have room to poke this needle through, I'm going to back it through. I back it through, that creates a knot. And yeah, that knot is in between the beads and disappearing right. It's pretty subtle. And so that works. Let's see. Yeah, I pull it good and tight, and that knot kind of goes in between inside the bead. What I'll do is, let's see, I did go through one more bead. So yeah, I can clip it now. Embroidery scissors, boom. So I have I'm going to have to continue with yellow thread because I have yellow thread strung and not black. So what I'll do is, this is restarting. I'm going to this is what beeswax looks after many years of using the same piece of beeswax. But there we go. Silamide is pre-waxed, but I just waxed the end. And I'm going to do a big old herkin, roll it off the end of your finger knot. So see how if you haven't done this, you just kind of jauntily, junkily roll it around, wind it around your finger, and then you're rolling it off the end of your finger, purposely twisting it. Once you have that twisted wad, you're going to pinch it into a big old herkin knot wad. Why do you want that? Because you want to see where it is, because you're going to trim it later. So that's going to go away. But it's a good placeholder. Now again, oh dear. Okay, let's say got a cup of coffee. I answered the door or answered the phone, and then I went back to my work and I said, "Oh, where did I leave off? This is where I let off, down here, not up here. If I restart here, then let's see. Well, if I restarted at this bead, then I don't have a bead to go into. If I, oh, wait a minute. Well, yeah, if I restarted here and I put a bead on or put a bead, go through, put a bead on, go through, put a bead on, go through, put a bead on, go through, oops, I would fall off a cliff. It's that, it's that spot where I want to restart. So basically, don't restart at an up bead, restart at a down bead. But get this, if you're in the middle of the row, in other words, if I had completed this row, let's say I had a bead here. Let's say it was already like this. Okay. Then let's say this is the way I finished it. My restarting spot would not be up here, it would be down here. You always want to restart at the down bead because you need an up bead to go into. So when you're in the middle of the row, it's a little harder to see, or it can be. So I will recreate that. Hello, there we go. And what I want to do, and I'm spending a lot of time on this. In real life, it'll be like, oh, okay, here's my restarting spot, boom. But I will just want to take you through everything. I don't want to just get started and go, oh yeah, hope you're catching up with me here. So what you do with your restarting spot, yeah, if you're not sure where it is, especially, I mean, you could do a piece that's this big around and you are somewhere around let's say a 10-inch diameter circle, and you're going, oh my God, where do I restart? I forgot. I put this down and I forgot to mark the place. I've done this before. I just go around the piece going, okay, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up. There's my restarting spot. So it's that up, down, down spot. Or if you're going the other way, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, up. It's that down, up, up spot. It's the middle one of that down, up, up, or up, down, down spot that where you want to restart. That's one thing. What I'll do, especially, well, in any case, whether I'm using what size 11 beads or size 8 beads like I'm here, I'm going to count down a couple beads back diagonally from, so here's my restarting bead. I'll count down 2 beads away down below diagonally from that bead and go in, and I will do the same thing. This time I'm making a half hitch knot, and I am get both of those suckers, both of those threads. And I don't want to have to go down and up, well, I will. Down through it, make that loop, keep that loop, and then back up through on the other end. The one thing is like you want to make sure I'm coming down on this side of the thread in between. I'm coming up on this side of the thread in between. I'm probably making it more complicated than it sounds. You'll know if I didn't, the thread would just pull through and there would be no knot, and you would know that because it wouldn't catch it. So you'll know it's cool. Tighten it up. Thread disappears or knot disappears between the beads. And if I want to do really super gnarly, I would do 3 knots. You can get away with 2 knots probably. Again, I'm going to see if I can get away with just coming from the top. Yeah. Coming through See how that's that piece of thread there between the beads? And this way, I'm already through the knot. I'm already through the loop. When you're using doubled thread, if in doubt, be sure to pull on each thread separately and massage your thread. Go like that. Your thread likes it, you like it, it makes it so it less likely to twist. Will it? Which it will do. One more bead to go through. See how I'm coming out. I started by passing through this bead, did a knot, went through this bead, did a knot, and I've got one more to go before I can restart. Here's my restarting spot. It's that up, down, down, or down, up, up spot. And yeah, if I really want to do it ultra secure, I'll do one more knot. 3 knots ought to be plenty, even for big beads. If in doubt, just do an extra knot. Okay, here we go. And again, I'm just passing the thread underneath the old thread that is going in between this bead and this bead. Catch that loop. Third knot, hooray. And then I get to restart. I'm going to do my first stitch. Then I will take the knot off. Yes, this gets to go away. You're not going to leave your work like that, are you? If you can make one of these much more discreetly and tinily, you can actually leave it there and just take a lighted match head to that, and it'll burn into a much tinier, it'll burn somewhat away into a much tinier knot. That's another way to do it. I purposely just made a big old Herkin knot just so you can see it. There we go. And look at that. You can't see any of those knots, can you? Yay. Now this work is going to look a little bit different because of the yellow thread. So, but hey, that is a fun thing. Why don't let's see. Oh, why don't I try to extricate this bead? This is why I like the slip knot a little bit better, because it's kind of a hassle to take out the take the looped through thread out. But oh no, it's not as bad as I thought. Okay, here we go. So this is what you do to take the stop bead out. Now, what I should tell you, and I do have an overhand knot. So I still have some thread to take out here. It's not free yet. Again, had I miscounted, I would have two beads to take off, or I'd have this bead and the next bead to take off of there, if that was the case. So let's see. And I want to just double check that I am recording. Yes, I am. I am happy to say that I am actually recording, because I was really hoping that, let's see, there we go. I did that once where I was teaching a class on Zoom, and I thought I was screen sharing, and no, but that was for about the last 15 minutes of class. So it wasn't a complete horror show, but just want to make sure. So yeah, I'm getting this last bit of thread out. Can be a minor hassle. Hopefully not. There we go. Come on, baby. I talk to my beads sometimes. There we go. So I took that excess bead off. Now, here's the deal. These are going to come out unless you thread your needle. And if you're lucky, I have a size. Oh, I should do some little logistical thingies for you. For newbies, generally I would start with size 8, unless you're already adept at sewing. Um, for the size of beads. The sizes, numbers of beads, size 11, the sizes of beads are kind of like wire gauges. They are done such that the the higher the number, the smaller the bead. Same with beading needles. The higher the number, the smaller the needle. See how again, silicone is pre-waxed. I'm having to do two threads through a single tiny bead needle. I've waxed the very end. I flattened the very end between my fingers. Oh, I'm gonna trim that guy. Ay, ay, ay. And flattened it, and I have to see daylight through the eye of the needle. And, and see how little thread is poking out between my fingers. If it's longer than this, the thread will bend and not go through your needle. Now this is tricky because it's I usually only have to thread one thread at a time, and because again I'm lazy, I want to not have to string each of these threads separately. So if I can get away with that, I would like to very much. And it looks like I did. Hooray. So again, this is something I didn't get to show in my class that I taught, a beading class I taught at a bead store locally to beginners, but this is again, this is the starting end of the thread, and I'm just basically threading it into the work. I could just zigzag my way through this. One student of mine called it walking a country mile, or I could again do the same thing I was doing with the finishing off the thread, which is making a half hitch knot. So it's a good excuse to show you that again. Here we go. Where am I coming out? There. So I'm going to come in. Oh, wait. Yeah. I went down there. So I need to. Come on, baby. Here we go. Come up here. Pass that through the loop. And, oh man, it is raining outside. This is a good rainy day activity. I don't know if it rains where you are out in YouTube land, but it is, I live in a rainy part of the country, and just like quilting is popular among people who live in very, very cold climates, um, I would say that beading is a really fun activity to keep the rain blues away. It is pounding. Let's see. Ooh, I can hear it. Okay. Anyway, just so you know. And again, uh, I can keep going. I can actually, if I'm really stuffing those bead holes with thread, for example, especially if I'm using size 11, I can zigzag, I can change direction, and this bead will probably have at least, 6, if not 8 threads going through it. So boom. Beware that it's possible to break beads from inside, burst them by passing through the threads too many times, especially with those wonderful thin-walled, large-hole delica beads. I've done that before. I have uh, committed beadicide, but what can I say? Um, Either way, do your favorite way. Make sure you don't uh, wreck your work while doing it, i.e. busting beads out from the inside. And when you trim your thread, pull, pull against the work, make it as tight as you can so you don't have this. You don't end up with that. You don't want to end up with that. Well, one thing I can do is I can, use a lighter or take old school matches and burn it. But look at all the thread here. I don't want to burn its neighbors. I just want to burn that thing. So what I'll do is I'll just put the hot head on there without burning the actual thread that I want to keep on there. And let's see. So yeah, I'm talking about wrecking things and starting fires. What can I say? Now, what I'll do, and again, I think what I'll do is I will switch beads on you and let's see, do as I say, not as I do. I'm going to not mix the beads because I'm not working with them together anyway. But I'm going to use size 11 and I will take that thread that I just elaborately started and use that so you can see the thread while I'm working. And again, let's see here. I will actually use one of the larger beads for a stop bead. Oh, actually, I'll show you because I can. I showed you, a way to start it with a stop bead. If you want, and see how when I have a white ceramic plate, I can just, this is class, so I'm kind of being careful with it, but I just shovel the beads on. What can I say? It's quick and easy. What I can do is since this is, well, since I already showed you single count, I'll show you 3 count. And again, I could count an odd number of units of 3. In other words, an odd number that is divisible by the number 3, i.e. 9, 15, 21, etc. But I'm not going to. I'm just going to I'm just going to string a bunch of beads. I'm going to hold the end. And this is kind of a little more hassle, but it's just another way to start it. And what I'll do is because I'm using units of 3 instead of 1, I'm going to do 2 times 3. On the single count, we did 2 beads. We skipped over 2 beads. Since we're doing 3 count, we're skipping over 2 times 3 beads equals 6. So I'm skipping over 6. Ooh, gotta catch this thing. Oh, gotta skip over 6 again. 3, 6. And I'm stringing through 3. So same principle is involved, only we're doing 3 at a time. Guess what that means? It's 3 times as fast to get somewhere with it. It brings on a different texture. And see how I'm kind of pushing this into shape so that because these are going to want to, initially, you're going to get them on there and they're going to be like that or something, right? So just smush them into shape. What can I say? Now, again, I might have some beads that I need to discard. So I've got 3 beads on. I'm coming out of 3. I skip 3 and I've got 3 beads on. And guess what? I go through 3. And the first row is a hassle. The next row will be less of a hassle. Okay. Oh, that's why people like stop beads, because they don't have to hold on to something while getting that first, excuse me, the first 3 rows started. Then, now this is funny. I'm glad this ended up this way. Many people would view this as a mistake. Oh, I didn't string enough beads. Oh, I'm gonna skip. I came out of three. I strung three. I'm gonna skip three, and there's only two left. So now I've got a I've got a two bead stitch on the end of the row. That's all right. I don't mind. I can live with that. If design wise you can't live with that, yeah, you gotta count your beads. But I just want to show you that I think this will be fine. I don't mind a I don't mind that. And see how, because I held on to it, I don't have a stop bead. I can just tie a knot, have it go one way, have it go the other, two knots. I have some kind of mental block. I always forget whether it's a granny stitch or a square stitch, a granny knot or square knot. I think it's a granny knot. I don't know. There's always at least one person in class who knows which one it is, and thank God for these people. So, whatever I'm about to string, I skip. Or excuse me, whatever I'm about to skip, I string. I'm about to skip two. I want to see if I can get this a little closer. Okay, focus sesame, baby. Oh, there we go. Got it a little closer. The beads are smaller. What the hey? They're easy to see because they're dark against a white surface, but I love those vintage opalescent beads. What can I say? So yeah, whatever I'm about to skip, I string. So I'm about to skip two, I string two. And what are those up beads? There are three up beads. So I put that needle through all three up beads. Again, pinch and pull, end of the row. And I instinctually, every time, boom, I do that because it holds the work in place. Because my thread tension is tight, it's easy to identify. This is not an up bead. This is not an up bead. These are up beads. So even though it's kind of pulling, it's kind of suggesting itself. So now the peyote stitch lays in kind of a brick pattern. There is another stitch called brick stitch that is actually worked a completely different way than peyote stitch, but it also lays in that way. And that's a wonderful stitch as well. So yeah, see how straight that is too? These beads are a little bit different. The difference between these are Japanese seed beads. They're wonderful shape. They're a little more squarish. Look at how these are a little more bagel or donut shaped. That can sometimes lend itself to the idea that the bagel or donut shaped beads, which are usually check or a vintage, are harder to work with because they are more irregular. Vintage beads are generally pretty irregular. The modern check beads are to their credit, they are not so much irregular as merely bagel or donut shaped, so they don't kind of click in the way the Japanese seed beads do, especially the Icos and the Delicas, which are specially made, thin-walled, perfect little cylinders. But I urge you to not discount the bagel or donut shaped beads because they have their virtues. When you're doing sculptural work, it's very much an advantage to have bagel or donut shaped beads like these. So do try both of them. Yes, if you're using a grid pattern, a flat back and forth peyote stitch, Japanese seed beads or the more square seed beads are more to your advantage. But if you're doing anything that is circular or round or bulges out or pinches back down in and so on, do see that check out the difference between them because it's worth it's also worth getting used to working with because sometimes you want a different effect and sometimes you want certain colors that are only available in the bagel or donut shapes beads. So don't if you want to avoid limiting your choices, do experiment and do just do a little patch like this of all the different as many different types of beads as you can find and see how it goes, see how you like them, and you'll be able to make more informed decisions, design decisions, and you'll know whether you want to work with something and or if you want to work with something, you already know what its limitations are. And if you are not sure if you want to work with something, then you can try it out and find out. And you can also not be limited by your skills in dealing with irregularly shaped beads, and you'll have more design choices that way. Oh, I almost made a mistake. Well, why don't I just make that mistake? Check this out. I'm going to put 3 beads over a 2 bead spot. What is going to happen there? Well, it makes it wider. What can I say? And what if I just let that bead stick out? Now I've got a sticky outy bead. Okay. Now, while we're on the subject of sticky outy beads, see, it's hard for me to teach a straight, just beginner class because I end up going, well, what if, oh, you made a mistake? Oh, that's great. That looks cool. Keep it, or whatever. Or if you kept it, this is what would happen. Well, uh, one thing that could happen is, yeah, you put on too many beads. One thing I could do is when I get back to here, I could go through all 3 of them and make it wider. I could also just ignore that and go through 2. So it'll have a slightly different effect depending on what I do. Why don't I pick one? If I was doing this as a live YouTube thing, I could do a quick poll and say, okay, which one do you want me to do? I'm gonna have to pick one, and I will do that at the end of their end. Just so you know, I generally do not go above three beads per stitch. In other words, I could do single count, I can do 2 count, and I can do 3 count, but I don't like to do 4 count for any serious length of work because it loses structural integrity. It just gets, there's a little bit of gaposis already with these 3 count beads. I don't want more gaposis than that. That's kind of just me, but it kind of works in practice. I like work that's sturdy. Now, let's see what'll happen. I've done this before on purpose. You end up with a little gap there. And sometimes you want gaps. Sometimes there's netted work that I'll do that involves purposeful gaps. Or I could just go, okay, let's just make this a 3 bead stitch. And then I could continue with a 3 count. And then it'll be all 3 count at this point. It's not 3 count back here, but it's 3 count now up here. That's the basic increase. There's another way, what I could do too. Here's another thing I could do. Again, see how I'm backing out the stitch from the thread end and not from the needle end because of what I told you earlier. Now, this is another possibility. What if I really wanted to flap it out? What if I wanted this end to just start going that way instead of up, instead of this straight shot guy? Well, this is what I would do. I would go, hey, why don't I just go through the middle bead, skip over this. So this is I'll show you first. These are the 3 beads I went through. What if I turned these 3 beads into something else? I have 2 beads on that I just strung. I will go through just the middle of those 3 beads. See, there's the first, second, and third. And boom, all of a sudden, and again, there's a price to pay. There's a little bit of gaposis there, but that's what happens with sculptural work. Then, okay, maybe I'll just keep the status quo going and see how I used the first of those 3 beads as a jumping off spot, as a bead to skip over, but then I went through the middle of those three beads, and then I'm coming out of the middle of those three beads, and I put one on and I go through the next three. So I kind of turned that three bead, three ostensible down beads into a platform for boing. So this is the boing part. I came out of those, I went through all three of those. I came out there, I put two on, and went through the middle back. Instead of, skipping over uh, all three of them, I turned them into three single beads, three single count stitches. And I put two on there because I keep wanting it to go that way. Now, what if I did the opposite? And I want to not make this video excessively long because I know you're busy and you don't have time to watch videos all day, every day. So I'm going to do something different here. What if I, what if I went back to to two count? So I put on two beads and I go through and I skip over those three. Well, let's find out. It makes a bulge. It gives some dimensionality to the piece. So when this piece is done, if I was to do that every few rows, then I would have this kind of bunchy stuff. I would have surface, it would look kind of like surface embellishment. So here's the back, and then so the back is concave and the front is convex. So hey, try it out. Try all these things out. Let me know in I guess I'll be doing this as a YouTube video. So let me know in the comments whether you tried this, that, or the other thing, and whether you made a mistake that looked cool that you kept. And also, please, I have to remember to ask people this. Um, hit the like button if you like it, subscribe if you want more videos like this, comment and let me know what you want to learn and what's still not clear, because I'm very happy to go over things that haven't been made clear, and share it with your friends. Share it with your friends, foes, and share it with your friends. Confuse your enemies with it, that kind of thing. In any case, whatever you do, have fun doing it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.